Hey, good afternoon, our listeners out there. I am excited to bring you the March Poetrio reading. My name is Mildred Barya, and on behalf of Malaprops, I have the pleasure to introduce three wonderful poets in the house today. And I will introduce each one of them when their time is due to read. And the first poet I'm going to introduce is Komal Mathew, who is the author of For Daughters Who Walk Out Like Sons. And as usual, I like to mention some of the things I've enjoyed in reading this book and also welcoming Komal to read to us. So for daughters who walk out like sons, the quest for home that is indestructible, perhaps eternal, is at the heart of these poems. The poet journeys through several generations, stories, and beliefs to find what mothers can pass on to their children, especially their daughters, an inheritance that reorders everyday life into a miracle of shared bonds and identities in dressing or food. We are told in the end, death comes to take what we hold in both hands. So now is a good time to celebrate the living and returning people and places that are life's gifts. Komal is a graduate of Georgia Institute of Technology and Sarah Lawrence College. Her poems have appeared in Poetry, The Old Poetry Journal, Crazy Horse, Narrative, and other outlets, and she lives in Georgia. You're very welcome this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mildred, for that introduction. I'm like, oh, is that right? About my work, because it was so generous. And I'm excited to read with Alexis and Marianne today. As I was debating what to read out of this new book, I've been thinking a lot about peace. I think we all have, peace between nations, family members, inner peace. And so I want to read the first poem and the last poem. The first poem in the book is a very short piece, and the last one is a long poem, but they're bookends. The whole book is about leaving. Well, I believe it's leaving good places, finding better places, and in the middle of that, the fear and the wrestling that happens when you go on that kind of journey. So the first poem I'm going to read was inspired by watching my son create his art. He's an amazing artist. And at the time I was studying Psalm 23. And so I was watching him create and I was trying to create and thinking about God as the shepherd. And this is the poem that came out from that. This one's called For the Shepherd Who is Also the Path the Sun Makes in Daytime. A good shepherd is a wonder in contrapposto, an artist mapping the Serengeti with kingdom lines. A good shepherd angles a lion's eye, traps gazelles in dry fields, copies a cheetah's spots, one leg at a time. A good shepherd does not give you stones when you ask for toast, does not ask you to work without a burning bush, but owns a gate, uses a gate, pulls the weeds and leaves the wheat on an altar of choices. A good shepherd is a prince of peace when terror finds its full echo, a creator in the wild where a predator providentially becomes prey. And the last poem, and the long poem that I'll read, it's in 12 parts. When I became a mother, I have one daughter and two sons. I didn't realize how much I wanted to protect them. Like that instinct came so strong that I was surprised by it. And it reminded me of my own mother because she did a lot to protect us. And a lot of times I thought, oh, it's overreactive. And now I think, oh no, she was loving us in a way that she knew how and knows how. When I was reading the story of Jesus being crucified, there was a part, and this is in the epigraph that I'll read, that just surprised, it shocked me and it unsettled me. And it touched on a fear of mine, which is my daughter's safety. And it was around the time when the Me Too, hashtag Me Too, the stories were coming out. And I felt so unsettled by what I was reading. And this is the epigraph. It's, when the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. And so that surprised me because I never heard that, oh, it was one piece completely ripped from him. And I just thought, gosh, if that can happen, to Jesus, oh, it could happen to my daughter. And it just set me on a spiral. This long poem is me working through those feelings and emotions. This poem's called In the Garden, a Tomb. 1. It hasn't happened to me personally, but I've read about the ripping of shirts and shorts, the narrow alley at the mall, the dark rooms in every houseboat, city condo, White House. I don't know personally, but it seems like there's no soul in the well anymore, no little girl that can play alone on a private street. Though I don't know that room personally, I'm careful opening the front door at noon when my kids are home. Whatever you are selling, others are trying too. Did you know that, to sell girls like her? I don't know personally, but I know it's not wise to go to the park alone with my 3 young kids. There are not enough hands to keep them all safe, or the others that swing in slow, secret waves, squinting up to the sun. I don't know personally anyone who doesn't think about the ripping in the dark room. If you don't see me, if you get lost, remember to press the button with the star, find a crowd. Look first for a mama, then a masi, a papa, but never just a man alone. I tell them, knowing this is personal, knowing that God will at last remain silent for any man who's decided to do publicly what he's been thinking privately. And I don't want you to be in that dark, bruised purple room. 2. Your first words are leaf pirouettes, a ring on a glass counter, my best and worst, an echo of my ways. Your words are a silent, lonely work. Isaac down the road pulled faster than he can walk, and you sway, singing, no, no, no. 3. He is your only son. She is my only daughter. Am I to believe that this is the trouble you meant, this disrobing, stripping of before and after, that you would be the father of this kind of pruning, where there is a field of stones to aim for every part of you, that you would open and lay bare your knees and shoulders and high thigh, that you would be willing to allow dirtier nails to dig up this earth that you created, this earth you created by tearing a hole and speaking into it. 4. Eve to her son. I'm not worried about my sin, but yours, your sin that sleeps for 3 years after a faithful 15, the full snail of you that no one knows. Do you know what I was doing 15 years ago? I was cradling a city as if it had tiny fingers and toes. I was in love with the work of my brown hands. I loved the law and not the person it was supposed to love. Now you, without memory of being born, see only the full fruit trees. Open your eyes, son. The apple is ready and ripe for the shaken eye. You have a memory now, so I pray you will see everything isn't ours to have, to hold, and pursue. 5. Cain to Abel. I know I was young, but I was with God, walking, talking with him in the cool of the day, watching him draw an August gesture in damp sand, designed for tic-tac-toe or perhaps hangman. I didn't know how to play then with words, with the winner and a loser, with the knowledge of good and evil, but I saw a line drawn just for me, pointing me to a choice, not my flavor of speech, protesting what she took from the garden and what I could take from your grave. 6. When they come, they take the front door first, then your whole home, the broken chairs, the wide table, your linens. They take the firewood, the wedding jewelry, your hand lotion, and water glasses, but your clothes are the last things they take. Your clothes are your last earthly possession. 7. Rebecca, why is this happening to me? Moses, why, Lord, have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Naomi, why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Saul, why have you not answered your servant today? Job, why have you made me your target? Habakkuk, why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? Jeremiah, why did I ever come out of the tomb to see trouble and sorrow and to end my days in shame? Jesus, my God, why have you forsaken me? 8. The living water is thirsty. After all the sin, he was thirsty. 9. Let me be clear, he was naked before he died. All but one man left, but the women, 4 of them, stayed at the cross, hoping to cover him in burial cloths. Did you honor them as they honored you? Let me be clear, you were naked, but not alone. The women, did they know that they would die too? Should I trust the linen you have made for me to wear? 10. Someone somewhere is teaching me how to be vulnerable, to be a julienne carrot turned stew, a meatloaf needed in a blue kitchen. There are buffets, you know, where you can find everything on display. You can find pineapple and Italian dressing, and everyone loves it because everything is available in every aisle. Please say something. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Say something about my furrowed brow, about my turning to the side to sleep now, not on my stomach, not again. The stomach, the curl, the turning inside, the disappearing belly, the turning into pride, the way a man says, I'm tired, or that's right. 11. All day she's been wailing over what's gone. A ball, a broccoli floret, her yellow duck lost on a sidewalk. She's been drinking new cups of trembling. Somehow we are getting up and walking and finding new clothes like he did to wear. Sweet girls, celebrate, the old garment is gone, but the tomb is empty. Celebrate, the linen is on the floor. Celebrate, the curtain is torn. Celebrate, somewhere he went and found new clothes to show us that he is alive, to show how his faithfulness looks like summer in Finland, where darkness doesn't know how long to stay. 12. Should I trust this linen, this new veil? There is no covering, you say. Father, forgive me for the places I have sat and known. There is no place for you to lay your head. Father, forgive me, I didn't notice the splendid place, the shelter under your straw hat. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Komal Mathew, for that wonderful reading. And I will now take the pleasure to introduce our second reader, Marianne Worthington, who is the poet behind The Girl Singer. The Girl Singer is here to remind us that not even the dead are dead. Like a trickster remaking the world, she makes old stories new by stringing legends with memories and voices of strong women singers of Appalachian roots. The poet performs, contests, challenges, and transforms in musical joy and mischief, stunning feats of the ordinary and remarkable women that are acknowledged in these poems. Marianne is a poet, editor, and co-founder of Still, the Journal. She lives and teaches in southeastern Kentucky, and some of her work has appeared in Oxford American, Calix, Grist, Cheap Pop, Appalachian Review, and other outlets. Let us welcome Marianne.
Thank you so much, Mildred. I was wondering maybe if I could hire you to be my PR person. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you for reading my poem so carefully. As Mildred said, part of my collection is devoted to the work of women who were early performers in what we now call Americana music or country music, but was called in the late 1920s and 1930s hillbilly music. These women were immensely talented, and some of them were major architects in shaping that musical genre, but of course they had no power except through their own art. So they were given stage names, their names were changed, they had to wear particularly modest costumes. They were managed and manhandled by their sponsors, their managers, even their brothers and fathers and husbands. So I want to start with 3 poems that speak to the trials of these early women radio performers, most of whom were stars on what were called barn dance radio shows. And so the first poem is called Barn Dance Chorus, and the epigraph is from the songwriter Kathy Fink, and it says, "Little darling's not my name." And every name that you hear in this poem, and they're mostly nouns, were actual names of some of these women performers. Barn Dance Chorus. It's not cousin, gal, honey, or sweetheart, not little miss, little maid, little Joe, little shoe, little sunbonnet. Our names aren't sister, girl, lady, or aunt. Listen, we had to play like one of the boys, cards, drinking, jokes, to hold our own on radio, at whistle stops, at barn dances, schoolhouses, church meetings, and every blazing county fair in all the states they used for our names: Montana, Louisiana, Texas. Don't call us bluebird, songbird, nightingale, cricket, not sunshine, moonshine, violet, or sugar, not brown eyes, black-eyed Susie, Daisy, or laughing Lindy. Listen, if you want us, say the names our mothers gave us. Recall how we really were, raw-boned, standing spraddle-legged while we headlined those mean stages. Barn Dance Roadshow. Hungry as she was for fame, she never thought they'd change her name or dress her up in homely cloth and make her say those scripted jokes. She never thought she'd have to ride the waves of heat all summer long to hawk the barn dance radio in close school halls and fairground tents. No one said she'd bear alone the blues, the cramps, the damp-filled nights, the silhouettes on hotel walls where her name in secret she would write in letters of bright gold. She couldn't know the sacrifice to sing the lonely song she loved would be rough travel with quarrelsome men who never guessed her given name and didn't give a damn anyway. And Barn Dance Costume. Reject the lace petticoats, the rickrack hems. Reject the gingham bonnet stranglehold, the myth of calico for modesty's sake. Forsake the man whispering backstage your fate, his eyes green as dollar bills. Kick off your lace-up boots and ankle skirts and wail the blue notes that howl your heart's longing. Hop high and belt out the one about my Lulu gal, wearing that red dress from the railroad man and those shoes from a driver in the mines. Stay in the pit with the rough and the rowdy. Hop high, don't look behind. Another part of my book is about mostly the women in my family, mostly my grandmothers, who were very influential to me. They were both widowed, very young, never remarried, and were able to solve all of their problems all by themselves just fine. Thank you very much. And they were a great influence to me. Here's a poem that I wrote very late as I was getting my collection together and added it at the last minute as it was going to the press this summer. And the epigraph is from Dorothy Allison from her memoir called 2 or 3 Things I Know for Sure. And she's looking at pictures of her brothers. And it says, in my mama's photos, they stare out directly, uncompromising. I thought them beautiful and frightening. This is called My Maternal People. My maternal people are short and stout, thick-waisted, with unshapely legs and ankles like blocks. In a silent home movie, the camera pans around the circle of women sitting in lawn chairs in the farmyard. They wear dresses, short-sleeved shirt waists with matching fabric belts that sit right under their ample bosoms. Their bellies round out softly like rising dough. My maternal people never wore pants or shorts. Some don aprons because they must move in and out of the hot kitchen, bringing food to men or to children who are in other circles. When they talk, my maternal people wave their heavy arms loudly, hefty punctuations, signaling a punchline. Their hands are veined arrows, always pointing the right way. And I want to read a couple of poems that are sort of related. They came after my mother had died, and I had brought many things from her house to my house, and I didn't really have a place for all of her things. And so I spent probably a whole summer in the garage trying to make room. This is called Put Upon by Grief. Send us a feather, like the woman who in her worst sorrow begged for a gesture from her beloved dead, and a velvet wisp of wing floated right down to her lap. So the story goes, but we have quit believing. Our traumas have been too brutal. We stand beat up and bruised. Starlings have hijacked our trees. Now the quarrel songs of crows and jays rout from the next ridge. Now the woodpeckers hammer in less hateful climes. Only mockingbirds appear at ease. Now the unpacking and repacking, now the stacking and hauling away. At dusk, bats plunge into our garages and can't find the way out. House wrens foul our storage boxes with their grassy bowls, their eggs spotted as rotting grapes. Now comes the sweating through a full tilt panic. Now is the shattering of our unfolding and breaking open. The hawk hunts in our ditches, then hurls headfirst into our walls, and the glory of it all flutters past us. We miss it and are foregone. Send us a feather. Gospel song. When the Cooper's hawk slammed into the corner wall, I thought the neighbor boys had thrown a baseball at the house. In my rush to chase down those kids, I nearly missed his ringed tail, his speckled breast that looked for all the world like a designer cable knit sweater. How he looked for all the world like he was just tucked down for a nap, his neck bent just so. Every day since, I've yearned to find a wonder in my yard, a wish for personal salvation. Each morning, My friend remembers a hymn to sing aloud while she waits for the coffee to pour into her cup. Keurig hymns, she calls them. If gospel songs are all that remain of my childhood dogma, can I still be saved, even if the creeds still slink around after me sometimes? I don't know. Isn't dread now marking my dark path that leads to the forest where I bury the hawk? The woods at the edge of my yard shelter rowdy birds who like to fight and holler, their chatter like gunfire. Even the tiny wren, so fierce in her competitions, built and rejected 3 nests in my garage, one in a snow boot, one in the toolbox, one behind the paint cans. I stay out of her way and try to ignore the blue-tailed skinks who colonize the cracks along my driveway. And I'll end on a happier note. This morning, I saw my groundhog. I refer to her as my groundhog. Of course, she's not really, but every February or March, she comes out and spends most of her time right outside my kitchen window. Last year, when she came out with 2 babies. So I saw her for the first time this morning, and it made me want to read this poem called "Oh Groundhog." You may know that folk song by the same name, and you might recognize a little snippet of the lyrics in this poem. Oh Groundhog. Rodent just means its teeth never stop growing, my friend tells me, when I confess my obsession for the groundhog who's moved in next door. But groundhog is kin to squirrel, and rat is rodent, is greasy, ferocious of tooth, is hated by my ancestors, farmers all. Oh, groundhog, the consonants click in all your nicknames. I say them aloud from my kitchen window to conjure you. Whistle pig, land beaver, ground pig, thick wood badger, red monk woodchuck. I admire his wattle, his fur, the color of rotting wood out early in the morning, getting fatter and fatter on the endless salad bar that is my neighbor's abandoned yard. His ears, wispy cups of velvet, upright in relief to the gray frost of the guard hairs curving his spine. When he stands up to spy for my dog, he's the effigy of silence, unsocial. Yet in the late evening, at second feeding, he grazes unafraid while the neighborhood calico rests next to him in the clover and trumpet creeper. He eats till his breeches won't button at all. Oh, groundhog, you are all I want. Let me eat all summer. Let me burrow. Let me hide. Let my body fevers drop to sleep in the cool chambered heart of your tunnels. Let me mark my own shadow to forecast the springtide and wake to daffodils rippling. Let me have teeth of the rodent to bite through this world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for that wonderful reading and reminding us that it's spring, the groundhog is out. That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to remember. And I have the pleasure of introducing the third and last poet who is going to read this afternoon, Alexis Jackson. And her book is In My Sister's Country. In my sister's country, the poet says, here, meet Gwendolyn Brooks, June Jordan, Black mothers, grandmothers, and the woman on the bus who is scared for her life. The poet urges all these voices across generations to rise and take up space, singing their hearts, their stories of persistent survival, in loud and clear rhythms from earth to God. And so, together, they ask, why do bad things still happen to good people at this time, in this life? Through sheer courage and outrageous joy to live, what's not mended beneath the scars finds a way to affirm that these lives, these beautiful Black women know the way home and how to build a country, even in one's kitchen. Alexis is a Philadelphia-born, San Diego-based writer, poet, and teacher whose work has appeared in Poetry Magazine, Jubilat, The Unstud, Solstice Literary Magazine, and many others. This book, My Sister's Country, won the Corey Press First Book Prize, and Jackson has served as a reader for Kalalu and Bomb Magazine. Alexis, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Mildred. Again, best introduction ever. Going along with what Marianne and Komal were saying, I have the pleasure of being your last reader. And the beautiful part about that is that I got to hear lines from the mouths of Marianne and Komal. And I was writing down like my poet envy, the lines I had poet envy about such beautiful writers. And I am so, so, so thankful to be able to be at this reading today with you all and amongst your company. I will be reading poems from my first collection, My Sister's Country. Very, very excited to be doing that. It's been a long time coming with getting this book out, and I'm so, so excited. So thank you to Corey Press as well. A brief introduction of these poems. They're coming from a place of frustration and love. I think Mildred so eloquently discussed that when she was saying, what was it? I can't remember the word, but joy, right? This from joy and also this sadness about wonderings. Lucille Clifton says you come to poetry out of what you wonder. And so a lot of wonderings about the images of myself I was given, the images of God I was given, and how those didn't match up all of the time. Also, the images of myself in relation to country. So this book is a type of conversation with myself and all of the women in me, as well as an intercessory prayer of sorts, right, to a God interested in and invested in my understanding of love and country and collective healing, if you will. So a lot of this also was born from Melissa Harris Perry's Sister Citizen, where she talks about, in particular, the Crooked Room. And so there's a poem called Crooked Room as well that I'll read today. But the idea was for her coming from post-World War II field dependency studies. Basically, they found that folks could be placed in a room that was crooked, and large majority of them would and did reorient themselves, even bending themselves as much, I believe, as 90 degrees, to make sure that they were then, in line with the room, not setting themselves upright. And so the poems that I wrote for this collection in particular, and I think all of my poems, I was told by a teacher once that your poems, we're all writing the same poem over and over again. We're all trying to get at the same thing, right? So these poems are me setting myself upright, understanding that the images, like I said before, and a lot of what I was given and what we're still given, unfortunately, is a crooked room. And so instead of orienting ourselves, we are reorienting the room, hopefully, as well as setting ourselves upright. So I will start with the first poem in my book, I think fitting. So it's called Dear Mom. And this is, of course, to my mother. And again, trying to set myself upright in a crooked room. Dear Mom, you wanted me when God didn't. Told me to love him anyway. Told me you had no business acting simple with that self-censoring pause. Man. But I was a blessing. A blessing, Mommy? A blessing, little girl. Your blessing. My blessing? And all of this just was like it was wanting to be something else, but it couldn't because you said it. But somewhere between leaving your house and asking God about him and him and him and him and him, you wanted me and God, he didn't. And I didn't know how to reckon that with my still being. Didn't know if that made you or God or God or God or her or her. Maybe I wouldn't be so close to textbook anxious if you done what he, God, said. Maybe I wouldn't be so sad about the world, the word depravity, and about sin sickness existing, and about people pushing past kids for trains if you done what God said. If you done what God said, maybe you'd be happier. Maybe you'd be more like the Christ and less like all the heathens heathening without thinking about not heathening. Mommy, how do you look at your sin and love her? How do you teach her to be her and still need him who made you cry because of her, made you stop working with the church children because of her, made you think you're not worthy because of her? I really want your answer because you, him and her to me. And I need to know who to be someday. So if I want someone God doesn't, I can't know how to answer like you. I need to know how to answer my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, and know it. So that was the first one. I think we're going to move on right into Cricket Room. This one is one of my longer poems. It's based off of the Zuhitsu form. I learned it from Cheryl Boyce Taylor, but Kimiko Han is a poet, I think most widely known for it. And it comes from the words, it's a Japanese form from 1000 AD, dating back to then. And it comes from the words pen at will. So there's fragments that come through from anything from newspaper clippings to, something you heard on the subway. And so this is one of my themed Zuhitsus. Cricket Room. When I finally touch you, I won't ever remember holding my breath. These lengths of time like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 M-I, cricket letter, I, trace cricket letters down the lining of your jaw. Blue in the face, river clay, your ear ends taste like salt and vinegar, and that's just fine. I still call you Candy, King and Angel, and Baby Love. We still talk about Fish River Canyon like Namibia is up the street getting redone, like they'll let us in after the reno. And about the ice cream canyon craters and my butter pecan that we can't remember who spoon carved, playing spoons in the dozens with our legs laced together. Your mama so ugly, Rice Krispies won't talk to her. Your mama so dumb, she went to the dentist for a Bluetooth. Whose mama gave who what cricket big and second shovel licking toe shit. I burned the bacon and you haven't touched my eggs. And Gwendolyn Brooks wrote something about burnt breakfast and bleak ballads of dark villains and milk white maids. And you're already thinking of the Negro Speaks of Rivers and being born by the river. And I'm thinking of Vine's viral version. I was born by the river. I was shaking that ass. And it's been too hard living with nothing but the idea of you. I write these cricket poems with the idea of you when I'm worried about them having the wrong idea of you. So you'll never come home. And from the crooked system cell, you'll write cricket letters, cricket letter I, find all transit lines lead to the end of the road. And everything can lead to 90s R&B or a musical score trapped in the yellow brick, trapped in the yellow wallpaper. Yellow or red boned is something I am not. Cooked marrow is closer to the true color of my skin, so you don't put me in songs or club sonnets, and that's just fine, because I do. And I'm just fine until you reach for my waist, and I'm wondering why you want what doesn't make you sing, why you want Lady and Brown, dark phrases of womanhood, half notes scattered, crooked down across cricket room. Couldn't figure out whose hand was on my thigh, but it didn't matter. I must have wanted it. I was the one who missed the train, who made the dinner, who wore the red silk and the whole smile and the waxed brows and the Nile and the Tigris and the Euphrates and Malaysian curly and the catfish and cheese grits thickness. and dark ribbons in my hair, milk tea on your fingers, the wood burns white all night. You pull in and out of me until I'm plump with love, round enough to eat. If I wasn't so damn fertile crescent-like, I'd be able to stop growing them, to stop producing cash crop kids, more arid good land, to stop looking like good land, like Canaan, like second Eden, like the well and the drain. Delta stewardess said to count while my gum pops to make this part easy. I think of her with you here, and I start, inhale, counting, hunchback, hunchback. I saw a snake in my Bible between the beginnings. How strange to see it on legs with arms and feet, handing mother a clementine because it was jealous. And just me. I think I saw it in the Pledge of Allegiance and in the tent meeting, and strung between your hands when you laid them on Lily Blue and told her she'd be forgiven for dancing with Eddie Sherman when all she was doing was dancing with someone who wants to love her. Thank you. So like I said, that was a long one, but there were pieces of Gwendolyn Brooks, Ntozake Shange, Warsan Shidit. So a lot of influence as well as what I grew up hearing being reflected there. The title poem, My Sister's Country, Mildred referenced a bit when she talked about building country in kitchens. And for me, that also happened in people because it had to. So here we go. My sister's country. In the moments after his mania, I pick eggshell shrapnel out of my sister's eyes and ears and memories in my grandmother's kitchen. We hard boil hearts and devil them. Room temperature, bite-sized servings that put the meat back on our bellies, that keep us possible. We crack open the calabash and cleanse with proverbs and the fantastic about the women before, the women before, the women before us who homed with the men before, the men before, the men before him. My mother compares her recipes to the myths. My grandmother ices our feet. My sisters count their scars. I watch. My mother leads them back to our home, to their rooms, to him, to a fresh dozen. I follow. I am wondering why we leave my grandmother's kitchen, why we leave holding each other to hold cold yolk and white, to sweep up the aborted chicken fetus cocoon pieces for atomic warhead him, why I leave watching for warring. We hear our mother try a different way of whisking. We hear him plead Black American man hypermasculinityenza for war crimes. My mother forgives without promise of reparations. My sisters build a country in me. I build a country in my grandmother's kitchen. Here, the women have callous feet and nimble fingers. Here, it is criminal for men to make breakfast. Here, Mars wears red nail polish and the scent of white diamonds, and I watch her watch me spoil. Thank you. I'm going to, I think I'm still good with time. So we're gonna do rules for defining B, which is one that I love reading out loud. So I'm going here. And it's really strange to read this one without showing folk how it looks on the page because of the form. And that's true for many of these because I have throughout the collection, the words of Black women, so including Missy Elliott and Hortense Spillers, are outlined, just as the words of Christ are written in red in the King James versions. And the only reason they're not in red is because it's very expensive to print, but the outline suffices. So this poem in particular, and I will, read the parts of that, hopefully I'll read it at the end, is after June Jordan's Nobody Mean More to Me Than You and the Future Life of Willie Jordan, which is an essay that changed my life when I read it in undergrad. And I talk about it and teach it often when I teach first year writing, mostly because we explore the limitations of the English language and also what it allows for and what it doesn't, like even the truth that we're all here, right now in this space because language exists to allow this to happen. And if it existed to say we couldn't, then we wouldn't be able to do that. So I find interest in exploring these types of thoughts about language and what's allowed and what's not. And so these are my thoughts on the word be and the way we use it in standard English and African American vernacular English. Rules for divining be: in obedience to June Jordan, in rebellion against standard English. I be in my head on things sometimes, be right in the middle of something and be thrown right off by my own self on was, could, would, and maybes. I be wondering if I be anybody else, be anywhere else, if being be different. Be like Beyonce don't have lungs. Be like flies just fly. Be like, why I can't just be some rich man's boo? Be folding clothes or be on the phone or be reading and be like, I can't be no bomb for my block or my hood or this school or this world or some man or people I only read about. Then I'll be having to stop myself because I'll be forgetting to finish what I'm doing, be forgetting to be where I'm at. It be getting bad though, y'all. Walked into class and was thinking, been waiting on walking in here and being me. Been wanting to walk down the street in Harlem and in Philly without being pressed up on. Be yawning and they be like, baby girl, you be needing to be in bed earlier. Been writing this poem and been thinking about my man and been wanting not to worry. Been wanting to not be so hard with him when he be wearing his hood up. It do be cold, but he mine. And I be needing to believe that we be all right where we be. And I be so mad that I can't be mad. And I be listening to that Solange song, but it don't be working sometimes. I've been in my feelings on these things off and on. Been wondering why I gotta be so wrong and be working so hard to be so right. And I ain't never gonna be right because it ain't never gonna be right. So why I'm reading all this Jordan and Shakespeare and Smitherman and Plath and theology and poetics and news? Why I'm doing all this school? Why I be wanting to make more people to be where I be and they ain't gonna be able to be breathing without grieving. I be wanting to put this out and be wanting to feel right doing it. It just ain't right, or I be something I can't be right now. So I can't be having people reading this, being all confused about how poetic, how genius, how well-schooled I really be. I be thinking too much, was thinking too much. Be having to say, girl, stop, you be too much. This be what it is, this be enough. So that is the piece. And at the bottom, I'll kind of show, I have to show you information, but at the bottom here is like the, the footnotes, but these are the rules that I followed from June Jordan's essay. So rule 4, use be or been only when you want to describe a chronic, ongoing state of things. He be at the office by 9, meaning he is always at the office by 9. And rule number 5, zero copula, always eliminate the verb to be whenever it would combine with another verb in standard English. So that's one of my favorite pieces to read. So thank you for indulging me. I have 2 more. Yeah, so I'll read my pantoum. It's an exploded pantoum that the late, great Camilla Aisha Moon helped me write. And I was just really, really sad she passed recently because I wanted her to see my book. So I dedicate this particular reading to Camilla Aisha Moon. Proverbs 31, a kind of pantoum for the virtuous woman. The universe moves in a nutsack, your rags for his glory. Head, he is yours, and you are his help rib, meaty, fallen off the bone onto the street corner. Tender, honey-lipped death trap, broken temple walls can be restored in 3 days or the morning after. Come get built, burdened daughter of Sheba and Bathsheba. God will not be pleased until you are dressed in white. She's thrashed on the threshing floor for world's iniquities. He is your master onto the corner. Tender, honey-lipped death trap, broken temple walls can be restored. Don't be like little fast girls holding hands and all hugged up. Without him, you are nothing. The universe moves in a nutsack, your rags for his glory. God will not be pleased until you are dressed in white and your lips broken open for him. One thing he wants, head, He is yours and you, his help rib, meaty, fallen off the bone. She's thrashed on threshing floor for world's iniquities. He is your master or your morning after. Come get built, burdened daughter of Sheba and Bathsheba. Don't be like little fast girls holding hands and all hugged up. Without him, you are nothing. Without his name, your lips are unclean. So this was an exploration of Proverbs 31, which I grew up hearing all the time about what a virtuous woman is and what she should be. And unfortunately for me, a lot of my understanding, and I think for many women, I learned a lot of our understanding comes out of what we shouldn't be, right? There's not a lot of abundance of space or room for all that we can be and all that we are. And so this poem comes out of revisiting a virtuous woman, with the understanding that it's largely written by men and, you know, how it can be weaponized and is often weaponized against women. So I think I have time for one more. Do I? Am I going over? I think I have time. Okay, I'm going to do one more. My last one, this is what I have. And it is my last theme, Suhitsu. This is actually the first poem I wrote before I even knew the book was going to be a book. And I had done research on my family, my matrilineal lineage, and a lot of the ideas for including those voices came from this. But in particular, I found my 5th great grandmother, Rosa Etta, who I wrote about here. And the family story that I've heard my whole life is that Hamilton, which is my grandmother's maiden name, Hamilton was not a slave name. So we just knew that. Nobody knew why that was something that was said, but we took pride in that. And I found that the reason that happened was because of Rosa Etta. And when looking at the paperwork and what we were able to find, she had her son, so my great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, of course, when she was 11, if we're doing the math right. And then she was still enslaved at that time, but she then married after emancipation, a free Black man in Baltimore, and had a lot of children with him, and then took on his name and gave her 2 children born in slavery, including my great grandfather, his name as well. So this poem, and she also helped build a church with him. So this poem is about God and church and her, honestly, and trying to make sense and peace of all of that. And I will end with this piece. Theme Zuhitsu, my 4th great grandmother and God and me. Sitting in church, shut out, shut down, closed eyes and bowed head, my skeletal x-ray looking close to broken. I've prayed so oft that eyelids have grown callous and neck has trouble remembering the strength to hold up, and knees have turned red from sanctuary carpet dye, and tongues sound like sensible sentences that don't dump the devil into dictionary he can't understand, and palms have CrossFit course holding palms and floors and altars and oil and waiting and Jacob's ladder, and this indefinite amening in Black Jesus's name is enough to stop violence in Syria. Is not enough to stop violence in Syria, violence in Flint's pipes, violence in US justice systems, killing, kneeling posture in sanctuary next to sanctuaries doesn't stop the world from breaking. And I am afraid that I am beginning to learn silence in the presence of the Lord and absence in the presence of the truth. I'm afraid that the killing is killing my God. Taking that from me too means they've won. Erasure. And I'm left wondering whose image I came from, looking so unlike them, looking so unlike them, looking so unlike them, looking so unlike them. Benediction. Lined up against the playground fence, waiting to be picked, wanting to be picked first. Rosa Etta picked me, taught me how to play Miss Mary Mac in the right bottom of America, taught me how to find and hide in the creases between Alabama and Georgia and the Carolinas and Virginia, and so dropping me north. I remember silent walks in southern woods and long talks and low voices, shielding meaning from the big ears of over-curious adults. I remember skipping rope, skipping stones, stuffing brown dolls for pretend, playing like brown girls survive on purpose, as omniscient gods who set things up like this to show our immortality. Because we have been wrong, the wrong sex, the wrong age, the wrong skin, the wrong nose, the wrong hair, the wrong need, the wrong dream, the wrong geographic, the wrong sartorial. You ever read the passage about God opening up the ground and swallowing up all the disobedient and wonder why God don't swallow up all the white folk? Or wonder why the white folk act like they want us swallowed up but wouldn't have nobody or nothing without us? Call us sisters, but they Rosa Eddas wasn't raped at 11 by some white man's ghost in the family tree. Not in the same way, at least. Try to tell us we all one under the blood, but act like they ain't made us sit outside or upstairs or in the back to meet God on holy days. God ain't free to the oppressed. You got to do some stuff, sit under some stuff, not see some stuff. Those fans have been donated by Black businesses, the funeral home, the cab stand. When Black people paid, we knew that we really wanted to see reflections of the world we lived in, not someone else's world, even more wilder than the country churches where the tent meetings held by the visiting evangelists from the holy roller churches. We thought maybe they were evangelists rather than preachers because women could speak the word of God at their services, could preach. In our Baptist church, we had learned women were not supposed to preach, were not enough to even cross the threshold of God's anointed space. Dear God, why you ever fix your hands to make a Black woman? I ain't worthy of the good schools, the good water fountains, the good neighborhoods. I ain't worthy of your pulpit. You say, after you looked over everything you made, it was good. Did you make Black girls? Did you make Black girl hair and Black girl lips and Black girl thighs and Black girl hips and Black girl teeth and Black girl feet and Black girl backs and Black girl necks and Black girl laughs and Black girl tears and Black girl words and Black girl ears and Black girl breasts and Black girl rest and say this was good? I feel bad. They tell me I am bad. Your people tell me to be quiet, to be covered, to be small, to make them Lord. If I'm good, then they bad. And if they good, then I'm bad. I don't think we all good because they seem more free than in and out of your house than me. And I'm left wondering whose image I came from, looking so unlike them, love God herself, looking so unlike them, love God herself. An organ plays now before I take my seat, and you forget this lost gospel on purpose. Hear me when I say I do not wish to suggest that the womanist lens I am proposing is the only way of looking at the world. I do, however, propose that this lens is true to womanist ideals and can therefore be called womanist. So now giving honor unto she who has kept me from falling. To the only wise God, my Savior, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forever. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful reading. And I realize we are actually at the end of the hour, and it's a good note to end on amen. And I'm still in awe of every poet who has read tonight. So I do appreciate you, Komal Mathew and Marianne Worthington and Alexis Jackson. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. And to my listeners and audience out there, thank you for joining us again. And I look forward to seeing you in April, on April 3rd. My name is Mildred Barya, working with Malaprop. Have a nice evening.